Hi, everybody. It's Reveille Isgrig here with the MacArthur Museum of Arkansas Military History. We just got done reading. Oh, I don't know if you can see it with my background. No, you can't. Whoops. Here come the Girl Scouts. And with us today is Kathleen Pate, who is an education specialist at the Clinton Library. And today, though, she is here representing the Arkansas, if I hope I get this right, Arkansas Diamonds
Right, so
or Girl Scout Diamonds.
Girl Scout Diamonds of Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Texas.
Okay, there we go. I keep saying that backwards, so I'm sorry about that. And she is a board member of that group. So she's here today to talk to us a little bit about the Girl Scouts, her experience with the Girl Scouts. So to start off, just can you tell us a little bit about the history of the Girl Scouts, what you know, and do you feel like Here Come the Girl Scouts is pretty accurate?
Yeah, Here Come the Girl Scouts is a great book, and I realized a couple of days ago it's actually illustrated by a book that I really like about women's suffrage, which is called Around America to Win the Vote. I didn't realize Henry Hoover had illustrated both of them.
Oh, cool.
So the basic Girl Scout story is that Juliet Gordon Low, who had grown up in Savannah, went to the United Kingdom, went to England, and saw the programs that they were doing there, including Girl Guides. And she felt like that was something that would be awesome for the girls of America. And so she came back to Savannah, and the very first Girl Scout meeting was in 1912, and it was on March 12th. So this time of year, we not only celebrate Women's History Month, but it's a great fit. It's also Girl Scout Week. So a lot of celebration around the history of Girl Scouts. And when we think about Girl Scouts and we think about Juliet Gordon Low, I think it's interesting to think about her vision for Girl Scouts. So she very much wanted Girl Scouts to be a place where everyone, well, all girls, felt like they had a place, felt like they fit in. Part of the Girl Scout law is actually to be a sister to every Girl Scout. So the first troop meeting in 1912, and Girl Scouts grows. Girl Scouts comes to Arkansas in 1927. That's the first recorded troop that we have in Arkansas. Mm-hmm. And so it might sound weird when we say Girl Scouts Diamonds of Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Texas, but there used to be actually 6 smaller councils, and those councils consolidated into a larger council. And so that includes 2 counties in Texas and 3 counties in Oklahoma, because those are what we call the legacy council areas. Okay. And then in an odd twist, Crittenden County is actually a part of the Girl Scout Council that is in Western Tennessee. Oh. So most all of Arkansas, so 74 out of the 75 counties, and then 3 in Oklahoma and 2 in Texas are served.
Well, that's neat that they kind of went in different sort of directions there.
Yeah. And so that was something that you saw around the country, is the consolidation of smaller councils into larger councils. And so I've been a part of the Girl Scout Diamonds organization informally since 2012, but I joined the board in 2013. Mm-hmm. So I'm actually in my 3rd 3-year term. So I'll be on the board for a little bit longer. But it's amazing to see how Girl Scouts have changed over time. Mm-hmm. And in many ways, they have been almost ahead of the times. So particularly thinking about, initially there were separate troops for African American girls, and that was something that Girl Scouts did away with actually earlier, kind of before what we call the modern civil rights movement. And Dr. Martin Luther King actually once referred to Girl Scouts as a, quote, force for desegregation. So, right.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember just like an estimation about what year they
I could
join them?
I honestly don't know.
Okay.
But I know that, like I say, they were kind of ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
Kind of leading the way.
Yeah.
Right. And that's part of what Girl Scouts do. And it's a great place. Juliet Gordon Low talked about Girl Scouts, and she said, basically, in 50 years, Girl Scouts needs to change with the times, and I'm paraphrasing here, but Girl Scouts needs to change with the times, such that if I came back in 50 years, that I wouldn't recognize the organization.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always been girl-centric, and the goal is to have programs, initiatives, projects that are girl-led, right? So a troop leader is there to help girls have this, what we call the Girl Scout leadership experience, right? So it's not for the troop leaders to say, this is what we're going to talk about, or this is what we're going to do. It's really, the troop leaders are there to facilitate the girls doing the things that they want to do, things that they can't do in other spaces. There's a really funny story about the very first Girl Scouts in Savannah. So Juliet Gordon Low's house, which is now a museum that you can go and visit, it's a very tall townhouse, a multi-story townhouse, and it has a courtyard, a beautiful courtyard. And when she brought the first group of girls, the first Girl Scout troop together, she asked them what they wanted to do. What is it that you want to do that you are not allowed, that you can't do?
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to play basketball. They were not allowed to play basketball because it was seen as unfeminine. So they got together and figured out a way to drape sheets and make it so you couldn't see in the courtyard area, and they played basketball.
That's so cool.
That
was actually something that I thought was interesting in Here Comes the Girl Scouts, because they mentioned specifically playing basketball. And I remember the very first time I read that book, I was like, that's a funny thing to point out. And because it doesn't really explain why they're saying that. So I was like, well, I guess they just really wanted to play basketball.
Right. So not only did they really want to play, but they weren't allowed to play. It wasn't something that was considered appropriate for girls. And so I think, having girls, and we tend to think of Girl Scouts as cookies. Everybody knows the cookies, camping, and crafts. Right. And so those are, when you go camping, whether you're with your troop or, you go to Girl Scout camp in the summer, you're learning life skills. And that's really what the Girl Scout leadership experience is about. When we think about cookies, we think, they're just selling this product to raise money, but Girl Scout cookie sales not only fund initiatives and programs that individual troops do, that service units do, that councils do, but it also teaches people skills and money management, setting goals, not just financial goals, but setting goals. Being able to, kind of put yourself out there. Girls are taught, one of the things that you're taught when you're selling cookies is how to graciously accept a no. No, I don't want any cookies. Right. And these are great lessons to learn.
Which those people are crazy that don't want Girl Scout cookies, by the way.
True. I can never say no to Girl Scout cookies. Particularly, if I get to meet the girls, which is a little more challenging these days, but there's some great ways to do that. And it's a really neat program. And so we try to, one of the mottos or one of the slogans for Girl Scouts um, that was developed a couple of years ago, and by a couple of years ago, it could be 10 years ago, but I still use it because it's not cookies, camping, and crafts. It's courage, confidence, and character. And so those are the things that Girl Scouts are trying to instill in young women and give them that Girl Scout leadership experience. So I had a little trouble with my green screen today because I wanted to wear my Girl Scout green shirt. And I chose this shirt in particular because, and I'm going to have to look down to read it, which I know will be strange looking, but the work of today is the history of tomorrow, and we are its makers. So that's a quote from Juliet Gordon Low. So the things that we're doing today, right, is the history of tomorrow, and we are its makers. So girls are out there doing so much more than selling cookies. And selling cookies does so much more than raise money. So it's really neat to think about, Girl Scouts, I'm really bad at math, but that's 100 and, well, from 21 is 109 years of Girl Scouts.
Which, and you mentioned too, if the Arkansas was started in 1927, we're only 6 years away from their centennial.
Right.
Which is amazing. That's so cool.
Yeah, and we're absolutely going to celebrate that. One of the things I do as part of my board service is I'm actually chair of the Heritage Committee. So we are in charge of all of the old uniforms and accessories, and it's so cool to see how they've changed over time. And actually, Girl Scouts recently did something really cool where they had some young ladies design new uniform components.
Oh, cool.
So very stylish, things that girls might want to wear outside of Girl Scouts. So skirts and shirts and things with the recognizable logo, but just a different interpretation.
No longer the little berets and the white shirts, it's brown skirts and
right. It's interesting. We were able to do an exhibit at the Essie Purse Museum a couple of years ago, and we had Girl Scout purses, but we also had Girl Scout uniforms that kind of took it from the 19 teens all the way up to modern times. So looking at those, sassy uniforms from the 50s and, those groovy uniforms that I wore in the late 70s, kind of up to modern times. And, we've got a great collection of not just girl uniforms, but we actually have a lot of adult uniforms in the Girl Scout Diamonds collection.
Well, so bringing that up, you brought up cookies, which I love and am hankering to get my hands on some tag-alongs here pretty soon. With those, when did the cookies actually become part of the Girl Scout program?
That is a really good question, and I know it is not that long after Girl Scouts started.
Okay.
I think it's like in the 1920s. I would really need to look that up. You would think I would know. But it does
They've been around a while then.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yes. And actually, I saw a presentation last week that suggested that Henry Hoover, so President Hoover's wife, she was very involved in Girl Scouts, and she may have actually had something to do with cookie sales going national. And, the other interesting thing about Girl Scouts is we've actually had Girl Scouts longer than women have had the right to vote.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes folks want to credit Juliet Gordon Low, or want to assign her, as someone who would have supported suffrage, because she absolutely supported, girls being leaders, women being leaders. But in 1912 and the early teens, women's suffrage was actually quite controversial, and the Girl Scouts said, we're not taking a public stand on this issue. We're not a
Yeah.
political organization. So they kind of had a narrow focus. This is what we do. But then if you look at Girl Scout handbooks, even right before, so like the 1918 edition, like right before the 19th Amendment is added to the Constitution, there are states where voting for women is allowed. And there are sections in the handbook that talk about what it means to be a good citizen and what it means to participate in our government and the importance of voting. And, it has kind of the mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
And, this is something that Girl Scouts is committed to. In the last couple of years, they've introduced a new badge that is about democracy. And it's for all their different badges at different levels of girls, but it's all about understanding how our government works,
Mm-hmm.
kind of at the community level, the city, county level, the state level, the federal level. So really making sure that girls understand that and understand why it's important to be involved, kind of how democracy works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that is very important. I know there's today when I talk to kids about our democracy and how voting works, and there's that there's a big chunk of that that's left out in our education system now. And so I think that's really important to teach little girls, especially, like, this is how our democracy works, and getting that ingrained in them fairly early so that when they get older, especially, they know how to go about facilitating the change that they want to see in the world. And so you mentioned badges, and I had the privilege actually of uh, doing a little presentation for the Girl Scouts. When was it? Tuesday evening?
Yes, just a couple of
Yeah.
days ago.
Yeah, just
Yes.
a couple of days ago. And speaking of the badges, I am super jealous of that really, really cool National Women's Party badge that you had.
Yeah. So, and these are actually, to be technical, a badge is something that you earn. You have to meet
Mhm.
certain requirements, and then a patch is something that you get for participating in a program.
Okay.
So the girls who did the program that you were a part of are going to get this patch.
Yeah, I love that.
Well, I might have an extra one just for you. You can sew it on your jean jacket or put it on your bulletin board. So this is the Centennial of the 19th Amendment patch,
Mhm.
the Votes for Women patch that GSUSA put out in 2020. And then the girls are also, because we both this past Tuesday and the Tuesday before and this coming Tuesday, and the reason we're doing these programs on Tuesdays is because Tuesdays is when we vote, but they're also going to get the 19th Amendment Centennial patch from the National Park Service, because we had the opportunity. We visited the Women's Rights National Historical Site. We visited the Belmont Paul Women's Equality National Monument.
Mhm.
And this coming week, and it might not be apparent how it fits, but we're actually going to visit Little Rock Central High School National
Mhm.
Historic Site, because we're going to talk about how the 19th Amendment was not applied equally to all women, and that there's certainly a big push for voting rights for African Americans when you look at the modern civil rights movement. So it's not just about equal access to education, housing. You see the 24th Amendment, you see the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and kind of understanding how those changes, amendments to our Constitution related to voting, but then also legislation, have expanded and ensured voting rights
Mhm.
over the history of our nation.
Well, that's so cool. I love it. So do you have uh, what all have you earned in your time in the Girl Scouts?
Well, it's funny. I'm not sure exactly where it is right this minute, but I was a Brownie Girl Scout, and then I was a junior Girl Scout. So I was a Girl Scout for several years. And, I've got we were still doing sashes at the time. So I've got a lovely green sash. I will tell you, it no longer fits. I can't get it over my head and my arm. So I don't wear it very often, but it does have lots of badges on the front, patches on the back, a lot of cookie sale patches. I think my favorite patch that I received was for doing a bike tour of historic sites. I grew up in Augusta, Georgia. So, we have sites dating back to historic sites dating back to the American Revolution. So that was cool. And then my favorite badge that I earned was actually, if you look at what I do now, it makes sense. But my favorite badge that I earned was actually a badge, kind of a make your own badge. And it was something my troop did, and it also related to history. And so it it's I did the needlework on it, and I'm not sure anyone else can tell, but it is like a sword and a gun crossed. So it's again a history. I think it was the history of our community, the history of Augusta.
Oh, that's super cool.
Yeah, I think I'm the only one that can tell what it's supposed to be. My I my needlework skills. Absolutely. Absolutely. But it was a great experience for me, and I learned a lot, some skills that I don't use on a daily basis, right? I rarely build a fire from scratch in my backyard. But I could do that in the woods. But I think the experience of exploring, doing new things, doing things, in a safe, supportive space, really spoke to me. And it's something that I knew, as an adult. I thought, what are ways that I can give back? What are things that I'm passionate about? And I'm absolutely passionate about, growing girls of courage, confidence, and character. And Girl Scout leadership experience is a proven way to do that. If you look at leadership, women in leadership roles, we've had 3 women who were the U.S. Secretary of State, including the first, Madeleine Albright. They were all Girl Scouts. Hillary Clinton was a Girl Scout. You look at leadership in Congress, those women were Girl Scouts, and that's kind of where they got their start.
That's so fantastic. I'm jealous now that I've been learning so much more about the Girl Scouts, and I never was one. We went camping as with my family a lot. I joke and say I grew up in the woods pretty much. And so my parents were like, well, you don't really need to, because we're showing you these things, but there's obviously so much more to it than just, okay, here's how you camp.
Right. It's a lot more than making pot holders and pitching a tent. And,
Yeah.
I haven't figured out how it would work, but I've thought about a program that would be called It's Not Too Late to Be a Girl Scout, Girl Scouts for Grown-Ups. And just, because it really is, it's Juliet Gordon-Low used the phrase a circle of friends. And it's interesting when you meet, when I meet other women who have been Girl Scouts, we don't always sing the same songs. That varies by region. I found that out because I was a Girl Scout in Georgia, not in Arkansas. But there are things that we share, experiences that we share, that kind of brings us together.
That's fantastic. Well, I have one more question for you. Um, so a lot of people equate, Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts and kind of pair the two, and they do have some similarities with one another. Um, but we know, for instance, with Boy Scouts, uh, the highest you can get is Eagle Scout. So how would you compare the equivalencies in the two organizations?
Yeah, as much as we can, we try not to draw comparisons between the two organizations. And, unfortunately, I think a lot of people are not aware of the awards that Girl Scouts can earn.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a progression, and girls do amazing projects. So there's something called a bronze award that you can earn as a group project, and that is when you are a junior, so kind of fourth and fifth grade, and then moving into middle school when you're a cadet, which is sixth through eighth grade. They take that group, and you can work with maybe one or two, or do a solo project, but one or two other people, and you can earn a silver award. And then high school, young ladies in high school who are participating in Girl Scouts can earn a gold award. And one of the things that they stress in these projects, that these are not necessarily what we think of as service projects. So for example, a service project might be, we're going to collect blankets and food for the animal shelter.
Yeah.
And when you get to the level of a gold award project, the idea is that a girl, and these projects have to go through an approval process, and a girl works on these projects for a year or longer. An example of a take action project, something worthy of a gold award, would be for a young lady to look at the causes. Why do we have unwanted animals in shelters?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that because we're not spaying or neutering our pets. And she would work to engage the community to figure out how to make that happen. So maybe she sets up a low cost, no cost clinic with a local vet. She does a public awareness campaign. I've seen recent gold awards, and by recent, I mean within the last 10 years, a young lady who got the Arkansas legislature to allow American Sign Language to meet the foreign language requirement. I've seen a young lady who identified a lack of fresh produce for the food pantry, for the food bank in her area. And so she worked with city leaders to start a community garden that would benefit, that the produce would go to the food bank. And I don't know where it is in the process, but this year, in this current Arkansas session, we have a bill that was championed by a Girl Scout to introduce online voter registration.
Wow.
To Arkansas. So girls are doing great things. And like I say, these projects aren't just a service project, but their service projects are great, right? We're going to clean up this trail. We're going to, paint a mural at the community center. But these take action projects are really taking things to the next level. And girls are seeing that even before they can vote, they can have an impact in their community. And again, that's part of that broader Girl Scout leadership experience.
Yeah, that's incredible. So they're instead of just going and doing one project, one and off, really, it's about really
Yes.
digging in and being socially engaged and being civically engaged.
Right. And one of the requirements for their projects is that they have a sustainability plan. Right. So it's not, when they are no longer involved in the project, they have to have a plan for how it's going to continue to serve their community.
Wow, that is so cool. That is so neat. Again, if you get the, adult Girl Scouts, I'm in. I want to play.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
That's so cool. Well, just last thing, So if people are watching and they have young girls at home and they're going now, like I am, like, oh my gosh, I super, super want to be a Girl Scout. Where can they go? What can they do?
Yeah, just if you just search Girl Scout Diamonds, it's going to pull up the Girl Scout Diamonds website, and it's going to, on that front page, that splash page, it's going to have a place for you to click that you're interested in. And you can volunteer, adults can volunteer without having a girl in Girl Scouts.
Okay.
So it's not limited to parents volunteering to be a part of Girl Scouts. And then I also want to point out, we're on the tail end of cookie season right now, but Girl Scouts, they've kept up with the times. And if there is a cookie finder app, and if you download the cookie finder app, you can find out where you can get cookies. So it's not too late.
Tag-alongs.
Yes. Tag-alongs are my favorite. I also like Thin Mints, but tag-alongs are my favorite.
I know it's an area of contention in my house because my husband, he wants Samoas all the time. And I'm over, and I love Samoas. There's hardly ever a cookie that I meet that I don't like, but the Samoas, I'm like, yeah, they're good, but tag-along.
Tag-alongs, there's nothing like a tag-along.
They're so good. Well, I will be getting that app so I can find my tag-along.
Yes, and funny thing, there are actually two different companies that make Girl Scout cookies, and one of them is the one that serves serves Girl Scout Diamonds of Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. Little Brownie Bakers has all the fun names like tag-alongs and Samoas, and then ABC Bakers, actually their names are more descriptive. So the Samoa is like a caramel coconut delight, and the tag-along is like a peanut butter patty, and I'm like, no, you because I grew up calling it a tag-along. I'm like, I'm always going to call it a tag-along.
How funny is that? Like a difference, like regionally to different regions?
Yeah, and it I used to think it was just an East Coast, West Coast, but it actually varies just by council. And so, they're all great cookies.
Yeah.
But I just love the fun names.
Yeah, I honestly, I would be very confused if I saw a peanut butter patty and not a tag-along. I'd still eat, most definitely, but
oh yes, believe me, they're both very good. They're both very good.
Well, all right. Well, thank you so much for talking with me, Kathleen.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
All you girls out there, let's go be Girl Scouts.
Yes.
Here come the Girl Scouts. So,
absolutely.
I'm revved up about it, honestly. All right.
That's awesome.
Well, thank you all so much. I hope you enjoyed our talk with Kathleen, and I will see you all again next week for our continuing reading brigade with women's history theme.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye.